Good evening. If I could get you to come in and have a seat, we'll get this thing started. Welcome to tonight's forum for candidates seeking the Republican nominations in 3 contested Cole County races that are going to be featured on the August 7th primary ballot. The forum is being sponsored by the Jefferson City News Tribune. I'm Gary Castor, managing editor of the News Tribune, and I'll serve as moderator of tonight's forum. First, we'd like to thank the folks at City Hall for the use of the council chambers for this event, as well as JCTV for recording and helping us live stream this forum at newstribune.com. But before we begin the forum, I'd like for you to stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you'll be seated. Prior to tonight, the candidates have been advised the rules of the forum. Tonight's forum will include a series of opening statements from the candidates, general questions for the candidates, and then closing statements. We've divided the forum up into 3 pieces. The first piece will be the recorder of deeds. The second piece will be the prosecuting attorney. And the final piece will be the associate circuit court. None of the candidates have received the question in advance for this forum. Some of the questions came from us, some came from readers. They'll be intermixed in between. The ones that we are unable to get to tonight due to time, our intent is to still ask the candidates those questions and publish them in the News Tribune in subsequent days. For the forum, the candidates chose lots as to who would go first, so that the person who's answering the question first is different each time. Let's see. We'll ask you to refrain from expressing your support or opposition to a candidate by applause or making noise during the forum. And now I'm going to ask the candidates to come forward. So we're going to start with the recorder of deeds. So if you would come up and have a seat at your nameplate, we will introduce you at that point and get started. Yeah, yours over here on the left. Okay. There you go. All right, this case is the Cole County Recorder of Deeds. To my left is, get my microphone adjusted here. To my left is Judy Ridgway. She's challenging in this race. She was the Cole County Chief Deputy Recorder, but left the office in February to campaign for the recorder's position. She was in the office for 18 years and performed numerous duties, including training the office staff to record documents. To my right is Ralph Bray. He's the incumbent recorder. He was first elected to the office in 2014. Bray retired that year from Missouri State Parks, where he focused on preservation of state historic sites and also worked to protect historic documents and objects. So at this point, we're going to do our opening statements. Judy will begin. She'll have a minute to tell us a little bit more about herself or anything else she'd like to say.
I've worked in the recorder's office for 18 years. I've done every job in the office. I've often filled the shoes of the recorder's position, and I am running for the office of Recorder of Deeds because I feel taxpayers deserve a full-time, experienced, hands-on recorder who understands the complexity of the office.
Very good. Thank you. Ralph?
I'm Ralph Bray. I'm running for re-election, and I'm still the right choice for Cole County's future. I earned a Bachelor of Architecture degree at Kansas State University I enjoyed a career with Missouri State Parks where I preserved buildings and cared for artifacts. During my 40 years of community service, I served in many leadership roles and management positions while serving on many boards and commissions. I bring honesty and integrity to the recorder's position, and I am proud of the recorder's office I have built and to which I hold myself accountable to the taxpayers. As you can see, I have a broad range and a broad background and a wide range of experience that makes me uniquely qualified to fulfill the responsibilities required to serve us well and look out for our best interest. We can't afford to get stuck in the past again. On August 7th, I would appreciate your vote and keep us moving forward.
All right, thank you. All right, so our first question will begin with Judy. And we're going to start fairly simply with this. So explain to readers, viewers, here folks in the audience. Sorry, I'm an editor, so I think of readers first.
Okay.
Explain to us, what is the role of the office?
The role of the recorder's office is to record all real estate documents.
Yeah, scoot close to the mics, please, so we can hear you, okay?
Tax liens, warranty deeds, anything that affects real property.
It is on, folks, and so please, I would ask you to not interrupt her. Pull the microphone a little bit closer to you. There you go. And speak up loudly as you can. All right?
And I think the role of the recorder's office is to help patrons understand the documents they're recording and how they're processed. Sometimes when a patron brings in a couple documents and they've just brought them in from the attorneys and they mix them out of order, they don't understand if you record one document over the other, how that order could make that whole thing void. It's important to understand what you're recording, the document types, the warranty deeds, beneficiary deeds, trustees deeds. If you create a trust and you record the trust, you put your property in a trust, if you record that before the trust, then you've reversed the order, and it's important to help them understand that while they hand them over to us, they must keep them in order, and we should be trained enough to check the order, to ask questions if need be, to help them with the process. The recorder's office is responsible for over $1 billion worth of real estate, having trained staff, knowing understanding of the documents, and being able to help citizens, to help them not have to pay attorneys if not necessary, or to help them understand the fees and the charges, and find the exact legal descriptions that they're looking for, especially if somebody has a farm and it's been in the family for years. Pieces of that farm may have been sold off. So when you're looking for a legal description, there's exceptions to it, and you need to be trained and understand what you're doing so you provide them with the correct and accurate information.
All right. Thank you. Ralph, same question. What is the role of the office?
Excuse me, that is the question? Would
Yes.
you reread it, please?
What is the role of the office?
The primary role of the Office of the Recorder, in addition to marriage licenses, which we do about 600 a year, is to preserve and protect the county's real estate records, which all the way from present and all the way back to March. They begin in March of 1821. So our primary role is to protect and preserve those records so that they are always available for review for the future.
All right. Second question, what are the challenges? This will be for Ralph. You'll start with this one. What are the challenges and opportunities facing the office currently?
Challenges and what?
Opportunities.
Challenges and opportunities. The challenges, it's a complicated office. There's a lot to learn there. I don't know that anyone ever learns everything there. Opportunities to try to educate the public, there are speaking engagements and opportunities that become available, so I like to accept those and get around the county and explain the office as best as I can without it getting too dry. So trying to educate the public and try to reach kids when they're young to understand that there is a recorder's office and what it does. And opportunities. There's a lot of information there, and there are a lot of people who use the office for different things, ancestry and looking up family farms and their own histories. And so that provides some opportunities. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Judy?
I was going to stand up. I would say the challenges are that we have gaps in our indexing. I have written 3 different grants, started in 2009, the first grant, all the way to 2010, the third grant, and it had taken probably 7 to 8 years I initiated the digitizing of all of those aperture cards, so now you have a digital image, but you do not have a correct search because the indexing is not complete. And that to me is a big priority because you can put documents online. That's just a push of a button. That's easy to do. You can do an update. My phone doesn't update all the time. It's not necessarily good. So the challenge is knowing if you need that update, if you should apply that update. If you don't know your software, you may put on an update that takes the office back in time. You'll be going through 10 steps instead of 1. So the challenge to me is the recorder's office used to be, and we were told by several title companies, by out-of-state recorders, that we were the most efficient recorder's office to search. I don't think it's that way today. So it is a challenge to keep it efficient. Knowledge and experience, trained staff, and to get those gaps closed in your indexing so when you're charging people for their search, it's a complete search. What was the other part of the question?
The challenges and opportunities.
The opportunity to learn, to grow, to understand real estate, to work with so many citizens and be able to help them is an opportunity to me. I enjoy teaching. I have taught all the staff that's there. It takes at least an entire year to learn basics of the recorder's office. You learn every day, so opportunity to grow and to keep the software growing and moving forward.
All right. Thank you. Next question will go to Judy. You've emphasized in your advertising, especially, as well as some of the stories we've written, you would be an experienced hands-on recorder. How hands-on should a recorder be, and how would that be evident?
I think a recorder should be a professional administrator and not a professional politician. The difference to me is that if a patron walks in the door, I'm able to answer their questions, and if not, I know where to go to find the answer. If a patron is disgruntled and upset, which often they are because they just don't understand and they've just been given information that, you know, your home is your livelihood, you've worked your whole life for it, and they can't find a deed, they can't find a release, and the bank can't find a release. So it is important to be able to know the timeline of the years in the office. Not everything is computerized. If you had a release on your property prior to 1986, we're going to have to go back into the grantor-grantee index books, find that release, because at that time you had to produce a note for that. Today they just file a release document and it's imaged.
Okay. Ralph, similar question to you. Do you perceive you're a hands-on recorder? And from a hands-on perspective, what do you believe a recorder should be doing day to day?
Well, there is a lot of we've caught up a lot, and there's a lot of catching up to do. We need to prioritize the projects for the future. Some of the projects that we need to get some of the documents. A lot of the documents still need to be digitized. A lot of the equipment still needs to be upgraded. So we still need to prioritize and move forward, and we should always be working on projects to get more information more easily available to the public. Read the question again, please.
you perceive you're a hands-on recorder? And from a hands-on perspective, what do you believe a recorder should be doing day to day?
I suppose I am a hands-on recorder in that I'm there every day. And I get there, like I told the staff, in January of 2015 when I got there, I go to bed early, I wake up early, and I go to work early. Has no reflection on the office, I just get up early. And therefore I get to the office early, and before anyone gets there. And work with my day, I tend to work with things that the staff does not work on. The staff is made up of 4 deputy recorders, and they tend to take care of the day-to-day. I watch the day-to-day. I told them when I got there, I want to know what they do, but I don't plan to do it for them. But I want to know what they do and find out what they need to do their jobs. And we've been doing a good job of I think, keeping the staff with the equipment they need to complete their daily work. I look more at the weekly, the monthly, and the yearly for projects to make sure that we're we have a recorder's fund that we can do special projects with. And it's not a challenge to use that. So we have a lot of projects we can pursue with the recorder's fund that we have available, and we have we have built it up enough that we now have a good options to do good projects.
All right. Let's see, this will start with Judy. Judy, your departure from the office was a bit contentious earlier this year after you announced your candidacy. How would you characterize the departure? I've heard it as amicable, heated. Were there any underlying issues between the two of you?
I was disappointed in the departure because I had decided to run for the office, and I had went into work early that morning, about 7:15. Ralph usually did come in early and left early. So at that point, when I came in to talk to him, I mentioned to him that I would like to run for the office of Recorder of Deeds. Could we talk about it? And he had no discussion. He told me to leave immediately. I was not prepared for that. I was trying to do service not just to the county but to Ralph, to give him 30 days opportunity before it was announced so that we could move the office forward in my duties and share them with one of the other deputies. There was, I would call it contentiousness, because I was left out in the cold, and I then went upstairs to the finance office to let them know that I came in simply to talk about what my intentions were. I am not allowed to work today. I was told to leave. I need to know what I need to do as far as paperwork. They could not reach Ralph for 2.5 hours. I sat there and waited. That was my departure.
All right. Ralph, same question.
Well, I'm sure I was that was quite a day, and I believe I was there. I remember it very well, and I documented it also at the time. So I was there early, and about 7:20, Judy comes in the office. She sits down, and she says she's going to resign. She's going to file for office the next day, and she can work for 2 weeks or 30 days, whatever I want. I told her, well, we probably ought to make it effective immediately. And she said, so do you want me to clean out my desk? And I said, I think that would be the appropriate thing to do since you're going to be running against me. Also, leading up to that time for a couple of months or so, I suddenly I'd go to the post office and come back. I'd go to the bank and come back with change, or I'd run an errand upstairs and come back and change. And all of a sudden, someone started turning off my office lights as though I'm not present there. And I knew that Judy was looking at the possibility of running for the office, but there had been a history of issues that I easily concluded that she needed to leave right away. And so the conversation was, I'm going to resign. I'm going to file for office tomorrow. I can to run for the recorder's position. I can stay for 2 weeks or 30 days or for whatever you want. And so it took effect immediately. There was confusion there. Well, there was some confusion was created. Confusion in that. It was clear that her intention was to resign, and she was even quoted, she gave a quote to the paper that she's going to resign. The problem was she never provided a resignation letter, and without a resignation letter, there's not a resignation. And therefore, since we couldn't get a resignation letter and it was non-responsive, it went in the record as a termination of employment.
All right. Next question, we'll start with Ralph. Reader Christy Schreifer relates a story about a Cole County bride-to-be who went to the recorder's office to get a marriage license, but was told the marriage license book was closed at 3:30 p.m. I don't have a date of what day of the week that was. Does this deadline exist of 3:30? And if so, what other services are deadline like this through the day, and what's the reasoning behind the deadline structure?
I might have learned about that deadline also. When it got closed, one of Judy's roles there in the office was to take care of the day-to-day operation and the day-to-day flow. And so if there was a 3:30 deadline, that would Judy will have a much better answer for why there's a 3:30 deadline. What it is about 4 o'clock, the office, the book, the financial book, the book for the day gets closed, and the staff does not like to. A marriage license can take like 20 minutes, or the application can take about 20 minutes or so, 15 to 30 for the complete process. And so if someone comes in at 3:30, the worry with the staff is that's going to take them pretty close to 4 o'clock, and it might interrupt the schedule at 4 o'clock and closing down the book. There's also still plenty of time to close down the book. We have changed that since Judy's absence. We do not turn people away. We still try to get them in. At 4 o'clock, we can put off closing the book, and if we can get a marriage, we can do an application, and then we'll ask them to come back and pick up the license later.
All right. So what other deadlines are there? Are there deadlines similar to that?
Well, I tell you what, yes, there's a deadline at 4:30.
Okay.
At the courthouse closes at 4:30, and at 4:31 the doors are locked and everyone's gone. So at 4, so it's a race to get out the door because the alarm system goes on and things
Gotcha.
like that. Otherwise, other deadlines or schedules, we've been making a transition since I got there. And a little more customer oriented, I think, and trying to accommodate the customer. So, when you have people coming in, we need to allow time to serve the public, and then we need to figure out how to accommodate that ourselves. So the issue is, more in the office. We need to find the time and make the time to serve the public, and we've been doing a lot better job of that.
All right. Judy, same
Well,
question.
I think what needs to be said, first of all, is my directives, would come from the recorder. I was not the recorder yet. So managing the office there's decisions that are made that were not in my control. And I did read about that. I saw that on Facebook, that a young couple came in at 3:30. If I had been there, they would have received a marriage license. Prior to 2014, I was in the office every day at 7:30. The office was always open. I was always there so that people could obtain a marriage license before they went to work at 8 o'clock, and there was documentation that will verify that I was there a lot of times until after 4:30, taking a marriage license for a couple. So I am customer oriented. If I would have been there for that particular incident, the bride would have received a marriage license, no doubt about it. And Ralph coming into the office in 2014, having staff, change over, I'm training the recorder, I'm training staff, I'm writing procedures, I am basically the go-to person running the office. but there are certain decisions that were not mine. They were not mine to make.
All right, so a follow-up question to that. If the courthouse closes at 4:30 and there's a security system, not that I'm asking that we tell people how to break in or break out of the county courthouse.
Right.
Is that an issue or not?
It's not an issue because it's a judgment call. If somebody comes in at 3:30, absolutely they should get a marriage license. Somebody comes in at 4:15, I know I can take it in 15 minutes. Other staff members may take 45 minutes. So it's a judgment call. I don't know who the person is that waited on them. I wasn't there. I believe that was in June of this year.
But your statement was you've stayed past 4:30.
But my statement is, prior to 2014, I have a code to get in and out of the office.
Okay.
Every employee does. So if I stayed to 4:35, 4:45, then I would just simply lock and set the alarm.
Okay, all right. Follow-up?
Well, Judy would come in at 7:30 and leave at 4 o'clock. So I don't know how that works out there. I don't know if that,
That's not entirely true.
Yeah.
I would come in at 7:30, and the intention was to leave at 4 o'clock, but I was talking prior to Ralph coming in the office. But most of the time, I did not leave until 4:30. I was there after 4 o'clock, and I took work home with me just to manage trying to train everybody. So technically, I worked 40 to 50 hours a week, every week.
Okay, let's go on to another question. Let's see, this will start with Judy. This is about the topic of beneficiary deeds. We're going to alternate the questions between the two of you. And this goes to the elements of knowledge of how a beneficiary deed works. So, first, Judy, where does a person get the form?
We do not provide any forms for anybody. We do not, the recorder's office does not help a patron complete or fill out forms. We do not provide any legal advice. However, if they can get a form online, if they can get a form from a Carson and Coyle, I believe they also, Missouri Bar has a website, and they used to have all of those forms on their website. I don't know if they still do today, but they used to. Sometimes a title company might provide the form. However they obtain the form is up to the person. When they bring it in, we check it
Okay,
for
well,
statutes.
you've answered that question. Where do we get the form? We're going to keep these very simple,
Okay.
shorter. Let's keep it to less than a minute. These are simple answers here. Ralph, who completes the form?
who completes the form?
Yes, on the beneficiary deed, who completes the form?
As in who fills it out?
Yes.
I don't know that we know that, but, and like Judy said, we do not provide the forms, but sometimes people will come in with a form, and they will have tried to fill it out themselves, and they want to, is this okay? We advise them to go to a title company or have an attorney look at it, because there's a lot writing on that, and they don't want to take any chance of it being done incorrectly. Therefore, we advise them to go to the title company first, or go to the attorney first, and that's where the attorney would be the best one to obtain the form and have the attorney fill it out, and then have it ready for recording.
Okay. Judy, does the recorder's office provide the property description for the beneficiary deed?
You can obtain the legal description from the recorder's office. Again, I go back to trained staff, how important it is that they look at it and they know how to research it, they know how to find it, so they are giving them their actual legal description. Because you do have sometimes, like somebody with 50 acres, they may have sold off 5 acres, so you're going to have exceptions, and maybe another 10 acres, another exception. So you do have to ask a lot of questions and gather a lot of information from the patron to ensure you are obtaining the correct legal description. And if it's a real difficult property and a staff member isn't familiar with the research, they can refer them to the assessor's office to get a book and a page, bring it back to us, and we will print the legal description of the property.
Okay. Ralph, what fees are required and for what on a beneficiary deed?
On a beneficiary deed,
Yes, sir.
a beneficiary deed is probably 1 or 2 pages, so it would be $24 for the first page and $3 for each page after that.
Okay. Judy, to whom are the fees paid?
The fees are paid to the order of the Recorder of Deeds office. The money is dispersed into an account, and it is set up to go into it funnels into many different accounts. The recorder gets like $1.25 per document goes into a recorder's tech fund. $2 per document goes into a recorder's fund, his fund. And that is to be used for, the recorder uses the recorder's trust fund for preservation of documents, which we are way behind in. But that's what the money is for. It does not all go to the recorder's office, but the check is made out to the Recorder of Deeds.
Okay. And final question, can this document be changed, canceled, rescinded in the future, Ralph?
The beneficiary deed?
Yes.
Yes. Whoever initiated the beneficiary deed can change the beneficiary at a later time, prior to the death. And the beneficiary deed doesn't take effect until there's until we also get the anticipation is, the expectation is that later on there's going to be a death certificate and usually brought in by the person who is the beneficiary. And once we get that the death certificate recorded, then the beneficiary deed kicks in. Prior to the death, the person who initiated the beneficiary deed can change the beneficiary and can go a different route, I suppose, if they choose to.
All right. Thank you.
Can I add to that? I
Sure.
think what people need to understand with a beneficiary deed is that you can't call us and change it. We cannot change anything. Everything that gets changed in the recorder's office has to be followed up with another prepared document. If it's not, then as far as the beneficiary deed, if they meant to change it and they didn't, or if they called and told us and they think it's changed, it's not. The last document recorded is going to be your legal document for anything legal that you are going to have happen.
All right. All right. So at this point, we're going to go to our closing statements, and we'll start with Judy on the closing statements. You'll have 1 minute.
Okay. I would say, Cole County, you deserve an experienced, full-time recorder of deeds with 18 years hands-on experience leading the recorder's office and often working in the capacity as a recorder. I was the driving force beginning the task of digital updates. I assured protection of irreplaceable historical records, redacted all of the Social Security numbers, and we need to continue to do that. There are records out there that still need that protection. I would be a strong and decisive leader committed to you, the citizens of Cole County. I ask for your vote on Tuesday, August 7th. Thank you.
Ralph.
When I ran for office 4 years ago, our county was the only Class 1 county not offering electronic recording technology, e-recording. I pledged to fix that, and since I've been in office, I now offer 3 e-recording service options. It's completely secure, incredibly efficient, and provides immediate results. Also, 4 years ago, the recorder's office had gained a reputation at the county, at the county courthouse and in the community for opening late, closing early, or not opening at all. I pledged to fix that. And when I took office, I put an end to random office closings. Since I've been there in the office, we have never closed. We have never closed early, we have never opened late, and we have never closed on a regular work day. I brought back regular office hours that you can count on. We can't get stuck we can't afford to get stuck in the past again. On August 7, I would appreciate your vote and keep us moving forward.
All right. I thank both of you for appearing tonight. Both candidates are on the August 7th primary ballot, and I would encourage all those to certainly check out the stories we've done on the recorder's race and educate yourself about where they stand on the issues. Again, thank you for coming tonight, and we're going to take a short break, and then we'll resume with the Cole County prosecutors.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Sure. 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 No, that's fine. No, they.
That's fine.
Sure, that's fine. Okay.
So,
All right, folks, we're going to get started again. So our second part of our forum is dedicated to Cole County prosecuting attorney candidates. So let me introduce our two candidates. To my left is Locke Thompson. He's challenging for this position. He's worked as an assistant prosecutor in Jasper County before returning to Jefferson City to work in the Special Prosecutions Unit of the Missouri Attorney General's Office. While in that role, Thompson specialized in criminal prosecutions, crimes of public corruption, and violent sexual predator cases. To my right is Mark Richardson. He's the incumbent. He was first elected prosecuting attorney in November 2006. He began his law career at the Missouri Attorney General's Office in 1984, then served as a Cole County assistant prosecutor from 1985 to 92. He then was a private practice attorney until his election as prosecutor. So we're going to begin with our opening statements. Locke will begin. He'll have 1 minute to tell us a little bit more about himself or whatever he'd like to say.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Locke Thompson. I grew up here in Cole County. I'm a graduate of Helias High School and went on to Mizzou for law school. And growing up, played hockey and still with the Jeff City Capitals Youth Hockey Organization. And today I still coach with that group, the 18 and under team. Just kind of my way of giving back a little bit to the community. And during my time in Jasper County, I spent quite a bit of time working with and running the treatment courts that we had down there, the mental health court and the veterans court. And so I'm really looking forward to bringing that experience back here, in addition to my time with the Attorney General's Office serving as a special prosecutor of about 20 counties around the state, bringing all that experience back here to make some changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. As Gary said, I'm Mark Richardson, the current Cole County prosecutor, which I've been for the last 12 years. Prior to that, I had 15 years experience in private practice where I represented a host of different individuals and businesses on their legal matters. I represented people from mental health clients, some that through guardianship and probate work that I did. I also, during that 15 years, sat down here for 7.5 years as your Jefferson City Municipal Judge, where I made decisions on ordinance violations every Wednesday night and Tuesday mornings, 1 day a month. As the current prosecutor, as I said, 12 years now as my elected prosecutor, where I manage an office that has victim advocates, 2 hired by a grant that I obtained this last year, 1 from RACS, as well as 6 criminal assistant prosecutors, 2 child support prosecutors, and a host of legal staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, let's get started. So we're going to start with Locke. Both of you, in stories that we've done about this race, have mentioned that voters have been speaking to you as you share with them who you are, what you want to do. They've been sharing with you concerns they have about the other person. So let's just get that out in the open right off the bat. So we'll start with Locke. Mark's has run on his 30 years as a lawyer and a prosecutor. He's noted that voters are worried about your lack of experience, saying that all 6 of his assistant prosecutors have more experience than you. How would you assuage the concerns of voters over your experience?
Well, for one, that's not entirely true. I know that I have more experience than at least one of the assistant prosecutors in that office. But you know, I think the best folks to ask about my experience or my youth would probably be some of the folks I've put away. I don't know that my youth mattered much to Darrell Kempf when I had him removed from office as Cooper County Clerk. I don't think it mattered much to Nathan McCoy when I sent him to the Department of Corrections for 17 years. And I don't think it mattered to people like Norman Tucker or Shannon Spohr or Jamie McPherson or Randy Scharnhorst, who are now all in the Department of Mental Health as sexually violent predators. At the end of the day, I've worked in 20 counties around the state as a special prosecutor, and I was trusted to handle some very difficult cases. So I absolutely believe I have the experience to bring home to Cole County, where I grew up, to make the changes we need to see.
All right. Mark, this question for you. Locke has suggested in his campaign literature that he wouldn't hesitate to address the issue of corruption among elected officials. You've been the subject of some criticism for how you handled allegations of potential misdeeds by former Governor Greitens, Attorney General Hawley. How would you respond to the suggestion by him and others that you were influenced by partisan politics?
Well, first, I don't know, no one's approached me about anything Attorney General Hawley has done. As far as I know, he's got a perfectly clean record. As to Governor Greitens, what I would say is those allegations brought to me was a case that could not be filed because it had to do, the allegations was such that I did not put it in the paper because it was not fair to him what he was going through. And that if someone brings me something that's not a normal referring agency, and their claim is that someone did something that by me putting it in the paper would make them look very bad in that situation, when I found there was no evidence to do that, then I have to issue just a statement that there's not going to be any charge on what was referred to my office. And that decision was the correct decision. It was one that my position was being touted by other people as that I was going to charge Governor Greitens, when there was absolutely no basis to file a charge, no probable cause. And in each day, our office will get allegations that can come in or weekly against someone. The mere putting that in the paper would hurt that person, and if there's no probable cause for it, then my position is I should not engage in public discussion about things that has no probable cause because of the unfairness to the individual. We have cases referred all the times also from regular referring agencies. We do let that agency know if they question it why the decision was made. But sometimes the prosecutor is in a bad position in the sense if someone brings an allegation that doesn't have a basis to it, the mere announcement of that allegation is going to be unfair to that public. And I try to treat all the people the same, whether they're a city council person or a governor. On public corruption, I was the one that did the only trial in the Missouri Supreme Court on the impeachment against a statewide official. And that was a case that went to the heart of that person's duties as a criminal matter. Thank you.
Okay, so a follow-up question to you. I'm uncertain, when you refer to the irregular reporting agency, what agency were you referring to?
Well, in that case, it was the Attorney General's office that reported something. They refer us to other cases, such as unemployment compensation cases, fraud cases on work comp, but not tampering with evidence type cases or allegations. And so that's a referral that's not in their usual course to refer. It was a discussion that ended up in the Kansas City Star partly, but that was something that was both unfair to a prosecutor's office who's doing his duty, and it could have been unfair to the individual in the sense that that was not something that would normally come from that office at that time. And as I said, had no basis for it. And I'm not going to go out and be involved in things that don't concern the Cole County prosecutor in that sense. If they anybody can call in and allege a crime. And if there's probable cause for that, then we'll go forward. But the job of the Cole County prosecutor, especially being in the state capital, is to try the best to avoid being called into politics versus the justice.
All right. Locke, next question. The Cole County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is in a unique setting in which issues of statewide importance often land on that desk. Does that affect the ability to prosecute local cases, or should it?
It should not, no, and I don't believe at the end of the day, if you're running a good prosecutor's office, that it does.
So explain your answer. How?
Sure. Well, statewide issues, and I guess I'm confused by what you mean by necessarily statewide issues, or is that just sort of blanket? I mean,
issues of statewide importance often land
issues
on
of
the desk.
statewide importance, I mean, just because of the gravity of a criminal case, it shouldn't affect your office's ability to prosecute that efficiently while you continue to prosecute the rest of a local caseload. Just because a case might be getting more press or more publicity doesn't necessarily make it any more, I don't want to say not more important, but that it doesn't have the same, I guess I will say importance. I mean, just because one case is up and in the news doesn't mean that other cases are not just as important.
All right. Mark, same question.
Well, I think being here, it's important for the local prosecutor to tend first to local matters. We have, as of right now, I have 6 murder cases that I'm going to do that are pending. And I may have been misadvised. I was told Mr. Thompson had only 1 criminal jury trial. I've done 120 criminal jury trials. Our office has to continue to do those crimes that have the most impact on the safety of the public. For every day, our hope is we don't have a crime tomorrow, especially not a serious crime. And the Cole County Prosecutor's Office, myself and 6 assistants doing criminal law, could not get bogged down into other people's, what sometimes could be referred to as a petty political fight at the state level. If it is truly a case of statewide importance, such as I mentioned earlier, if someone's a state official has committed a crime, it goes to the heart of their duties, it's a crime that occurred in Cole County, then that should be prosecuted. We always have to juggle our resources because we don't have unlimited resources, and therefore it takes, I believe, decision-making from someone who's had 34 years' experience in the trials I've done to set the ship in the right direction to take care of what we have to do in Cole County to keep our citizens safe. And law-abiding citizens, I believe, should always be remembered in terms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they cannot have happiness if they cannot go about their daily jobs and lives without a fear of being victimized by crime. And so I believe that the appropriate view has to be to keep the resources prosecuting our most serious and dangerous offenders and trying to hold them accountable and have them incarcerated in a way that they do not affect the safety of our citizens.
All right. Mark, the next question goes to you. It comes from reader Sue Gibson. The Cole County Prosecutor's Office prosecuted 23 clergy members who were protesting in the Senate in favor of Medicaid expansion in 2014. What role, if any, do you see for the Cole County Prosecutor in prosecuting acts of civil disobedience in Cole County?
Well, those protesters had told the chief of police that of the protesters, 23 of them would not leave the Senate gallery unless and until they were arrested. Those 23, they said to the chief of police of the Capitol Police, will be wearing a armband that will designate under no circumstances will they leave the Senate gallery. In other words, they'll continue to stay there even though ordered to leave until they're arrested. That shut down the Senate that day shortly before noon. And the Senate had to clear order that the marshals clear the gallery and chief of police and the police clear the gallery. So there is a difference between First Amendment freedom of speech, which certainly I had 34 years of law recognize, and the criminal conduct of people to shut down a government function and to trespass after they've been given a lawful order to leave. And the people that represent us when they stand to speak on the Senate floor should be able to speak no matter what their view or what topic they're speaking on without being shut down by protesters. It has been much mischaracterized that somehow these people were prosecuted simply because they were praying in the Capitol. They did have a permit to protest in the rotunda, which anyone can get, but no one has the right to go in and shut down a Senate or House while senators or representatives are speaking, and then say, oh, we don't want to be prosecuted. And so I felt it's very important as prosecutor of Cole County to set a standard that was also good for the public to know that when you come to our Capitol, protests are allowed under a permit system, but they're not allowed to shut down debate in the Senate. And I feel that that's a very important, and that is something of statewide, just as tonight, if someone came in and tried to shut down this discussion, if the police tell them to leave and to give them a lawful order to leave, they have to leave for respect of our system. And if they don't, they should be prosecuted.
All right, thank you. Locke, same question. What role, if any, do you see for the role of Cole County prosecuting attorney in prosecuting acts of civil disobedience in Cole County?
Well, since we're the capital, I would imagine we probably get a little bit more of that than other places would. Obviously, if a crime has been committed, That's something you have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis, determine whether or not you have probable cause, and if you determine that a crime of civil disobedience has been committed, then you're obligated to file that charge. I will say that it seems to me that my opponent's prior answer was talking about prioritizing violent crime and things of that nature, and it seems to me that having a mass trial for 23 protesters doesn't exactly fit that mold. But.
All right.
Could I follow?
Mark?
I filed a motion to consolidate the 23. One didn't show up till 3 o'clock that day for his trial, but the other 22 got tried. And that was done in terms of judicial economy to attempt to save our community from having any more expenses than we already are going to have with that trial. And so I think it was a good thing that's consolidated. It's a rule that allows the judge to make that decision. The judge made the decision to try them all together, and that was appropriate in this case of misdemeanor trespass.
All right. So let's redirect on this question, because I think it brings an interesting point of order in that increasingly acts of civil disobedience have become popular and more common in the past 5 years, anecdotally, I would say. So what is the drawing line there where, what's the distinguishing line of when cases should be prosecuted and when the protest should be allowed to proceed? So we'll start with Mark.
Well, a good line is when it goes into criminal conduct that affects other people, such as when protesters walk out onto a freeway or an interstate, and they're told not to do that. And I have a brother-in-law who's highway patrolman who had to go up there. Then they're putting other people's lives at risk. In addition to stopping the roadway, they're having our law enforcement officers take up time that they need to be spending on violent crime, now dealing with someone who's purposely attempting to shut down an interstate highway. And in that case, when law enforcement refers a charge, I think a prosecutor look very seriously at charging it due to the danger that it causes to the motoring public, as well as the officers trying to keep people from getting hurt while they're attempting to do something that is not going to bring favorable review of their plight or their cause. And this really responded after the post-Ferguson, and it has been it's been disappointing for our country to have to witness those things that have occurred. We're a law and order society, and if you get on the interstate, you should be able to drive down the interstate without having to be held up by people causing a stoppage of the road.
Locke.
We'll say we've been fortunate here in that we haven't seen any Ferguson-like protests as far as any of the violence or anything like that goes. Anytime the law is broken, you have to look at the case and determine whether or not there's probable cause, and if someone by the letter of the law has broken the law, then ethically as a prosecutor you need to file that charge. And where you go with it from there, or how you prioritize it, that may be, that's all subject to prosecutorial discretion. But people who break the law, charges need to be filed.
Okay. Locke, this question to you. How would you assess the performance of drug courts and veterans courts in Cole County, and what could be done to improve their performance and efficiencies?
Well, I think that my biggest thing has been not necessarily anything against the drug or veterans court that we have here in place at this time. It's been about trying to establish a mental health court, which I believe is very necessary because 80% of drug addicts also have an underlying mental health issue. So drug courts are great, but they oftentimes only address one of the issues, and that is the addiction. But if somebody's self-medicating and continuing to use because they have paranoid schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, then you're only really addressing one issue, and that can lead to a lack of success with the program.
So what could be done to improve the performance of it?
I would establish a mental health court, and so that way we have, for those individuals who meet that criteria, who have the co-occurring disorders, the opportunity to go through a system that really addresses in depth both issues.
Okay. Mark, same question.
Sure. And even in private practice, I have helped with the establishment of the drug court. Also, under my watch as elected prosecutor, I've helped worked with the judge, Joyce, to implement the DWI court and the Veterans Court. All three of those courts right now get grants to provide counseling for those people in the programs. And so that helps address the issues that they have with their substance abuse or drug abuse, or in DWI court, a host of things, maybe from disorders that they have obtained due to no fault of their own. And so those courts operate well. In the sense, though, of the drug court, about a third do not get another violation in 5 years, and that's considered that they're successful. The thing that's always important with those type of courts, because they involve a lot of resources, counseling is expensive, it's very important, and for their improvement, I would say there needs to be a very much more thorough screening process so that career criminals do not get admitted to the courts when and if they are a danger to the public. There's another place that they can get their treatment in incarceration. So I believe if we let too many people into Veterans Court, for instance, we may be not having a space for a veteran that truly needs it. And so my issue has always been not the courts, but to be very careful and make sure we do very good screening for those people that are getting into those courts and using those resources so they do the very best. Our hope would be that 100% of the people do not come back into the criminal system after they complete those courts. And they are very thorough, as I said, with a big counseling factor. The worry is that will that funding continue, and that's a worry.
All right. Thank you. Mark, this question begins with you. Both of you have said in a News Tribune story that handling the cases related to illegal drug use is the biggest challenge facing the office. What specifically can the prosecutor's office do to address the challenge?
Well, we can continue to work closely with our law enforcement officers that are working illegal narcotics. Those, I believe, drive 90 to 95% of our crimes. And a very good, strong prosecutor's office in obtaining search warrants for the narcotics officers, working to ensure that the people that are helping them are kept confidential so they are not exposed to risk, and trying to ensure then that the cases they make, especially on the people that are bringing those illegal drugs into our county, get a high priority so that those people are removed from the streets and incarcerated. Our side of it is, if you can think about it, is sort of the supply side. We have a lot of counselors out there, a lot of organizations that try to help through public information. Do not take these drugs, do not take heroin, all those things to try to drive down the demand side. But our job in law enforcement and prosecution is to try to drive down the supply side. Right now, some dangerous drugs are cheaper now than they've been in several years because of the flow that they have coming across our borders. And it's very worrisome because when we see a person on some of the dangerous drugs, the pattern repeats itself. They spend all their money on drugs. They lose their job. They lose their assets on drugs. And then they become not a one-time criminal, but many times a criminal every week or every other day to get the money to buy their drugs. And to the extent that we can make those supplies less is very important to us, and we can only do that by having the ability to hold those accountable who bring in what I refer to as the death and destruction of some of these illegal drugs into our community. And we in the prosecutor's office do work and will continue to work with law enforcement to do our best to try to cut back the supply of drugs.
All right, thank you. Locke, same question.
Yeah, certainly a big part of it is cracking down hard on distribution or the supply, if you want to call it, but there's also a lot that prosecutors can do to affect the demand for those drugs. And that means, evaluating people at drug cases as they come in. And if you think that they're going to be a good fit for a mental health court or a veterans court or maybe a drug court, getting them into that program and diverting them so that in the long run they're not going back to that drug. If we just throw people in prison, without treating them for a drug addiction or mental health issue, they're 3 times more likely to come back out and re-engage in that activity. So with using these treatment courts, we can really do a lot to not just, drive down the supply by cracking down on the dealers, but also drive down the demand by making sure that people get off this stuff and get back to being productive members of society.
All right. Locke, this question for you. For the past few years, there's been a much publicized shortage of public defenders in Missouri. How has this affected operations of the prosecuting attorney's office? Does the prosecuting attorney's office have a role in solving the problem so that the court system can operate effectively and give an accused person his or her constitutional right to a fair and speedy trial?
That has certainly been a large issue as of late for the last several years. I would say that in my experience in Jasper County, there were some times where I worked daily with the public defender's office. Some public defenders were, and it's just like you would see in any professional setting, I suppose. Some of them were ready to get in there and get their caseload through and try and free up space so that they could take on new clients. Some just seemed to lollygag a little bit, but I'm not sure how much a prosecutor's office can really do to affect the drive of crime. I think that all we can do is try to deter crime and prevent crime from happening again, and hopefully that way, they have fewer clients coming in. But overall, I would say that's a much bigger issue than just one prosecutor's office is able to handle.
All right. Mark, same question.
Well, I think a prosecutor can do a lot in terms of making sure that those are not exaggerated claims of being overworked. For instance, in our 3-county area, there is as many assistant prosecutors and elected prosecutors as there are public defender and assistant public defenders, and we handle 100% of the cases. They handle only those for the indigent. And so in terms of sometimes our courts delayed some cases for the public defender who hasn't entered. In other courts, their judges in the 25th Circuit involving Rolla, and in the circuit to our south, the Miller County, Morgan County, Camden County, Okeed, their judges have ruled that there is not, and the public defenders must not wait on those cases, but they must enter. And indigents have not only a right to have an attorney, they have a right to have one now working on their case so it's not held up. Also, on our side of it, the victims in those cases have a right to have that case done quickly and not held up. I believe that here we have enough resources, and we need the defenders to get to representing the defendants as the courts appoint them to do, and for them not to, in my mind, disregard the court's order when they're appointed to represent that person. And I think it's caused some delay in our local court, and that should come to an end. And when they're ordered to represent someone, that means enter their appearance in that case and get on with the representation. And as I said, those judges in other counties found, in fact, based on the facts, they were not overworked in those counties. And I will say this. They all worked hard in our county, but so is myself and the assistant prosecutors. And that's due to the case numbers have gone up over the years due to what we've been talking about a little bit, the drug crisis, the mainly heroin and meth, which can turn people into bad people pretty quickly or kill them. And so the prosecutors can have something to do, and that's to marshal in the evidence for the judges that they're not overworked, and let's get on with the representation.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mark, last question. Both of you have campaigned under the promise that you would be a tough but fair prosecutor. Mark, what doesn't Locke know about the job that you now know because you're the incumbent? Locke, I'm going to be asking you, where do you believe you can improve from Mark's record?
Well, I would say the most important thing is we have victims of serious crimes, murders, assaults, rapes, and I do a lot of those serious crimes because of my experience. And I believe that a person should in a way pay their dues by trying cases, because that's the only way to increase the chance of getting justice for those families of serious crimes. And because I've tried 120 jury trials, I've had varied experiences since 34 years of legal experience right here in this community, 18 as full-time prosecuting, either assistant or the elected prosecutor. And our county is a county, that he should learn this, is a county where for decades we have depended on the elected prosecutor to try those serious felony cases. And we've always been fortunate, I think, to have prosecutors that have tried over 20 or 30 jury trials before they ever became prosecutor, myself included. And I think that's one thing he could take away from it, is the scare to those victims and those families of, as I said, and I could be wrong, but I was told he had 1 jury trial experience to his credit. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. He's had that. But as I said, I have 6 murder cases pending, 3 capital cases. I've done a capital case. They're very difficult. You have a team of 3 sometimes defense attorneys against you. This is no place to begin as the elected prosecutor. And so hopefully you'll take that away from the thing.
Locke?
Well, everyone who begins as the elected prosecutor here begins as the elected prosecutor, I'll say that. I do have about 8 jury trials worth of experience, 150 bench trials. I've argued in front of the Missouri Western District Court of Appeals, so I do have experience. And while I do not have 34 years of experience, granted, I don't think anyone's going to argue if they pulled out our birth certificates that Mark was born before I was, or that he passed the bar before I did. But I have energy for it. I'm hungry for it, and this is my home, and this is where I grew up, and I'm excited to come back here and have a positive impact on my community. Now, as to how I could improve things, I think really the efficiency issue for me is huge. Right now, we have the 8th highest dismissal rate in the state, the highest in mid-Missouri, and not all of our courts are being utilized right now. Taking changes from Judge Beadham on a regular basis does not do anything to improve the efficiency of the office. It bogs down the caseloads for other judges. And, these are judges who have been elected by our county, the citizens of our county, to hear all types of cases. And I think we should be changing that.
All right. So let's go back to this jury trial factoid here. Let's see if we can determine where the number is. So Mark's allegation or assertion is you've had 1 jury trial
As lead counsel.
As
and when
lead
I say
counsel.
120, all of mine were as lead counsel. I
the
did
8
trial.
jury trials you had, were you lead
2
counsel?
or 3 as lead counsel, the rest as assist or
Okay.
co-counsel.
Okay. So going farther into this, so obviously there are times when as prosecutor you are the lead counsel versus subordinate counsel, I presume is the right word. So what do you believe is the right formula for the prosecuting attorney? Mark?
Well, sure, I would say the right formula is when you have a prosecutor that's tried the murder cases and continually gotten good results on the trials. And the worry in any trial is if a prosecutor makes a misstep, the case is over. It can get thrown out. And it's very serious business. And so, as I said, if I'm as a voter, I would look for somebody that's had 20 or 30 jury trials and serious jury trials at that, which I have had. And I think that helps give confidence to the jurors that you appear in front of. It helps your own confidence when you go forward on a case. It also helps you learn what cases should go forward in the system and what charges in that, for instance, a murder case. Should it go forward as murder first degree, murder second degree? It helps you handle the grand juries that decide that case. Today I started my 24th, working with my 24th grand jury, which is on 6-month terms. And that's all very important in the experience that you've had to look back on and continue to make good decisions going forward on cases for our community.
Locke?
Sure. People get caught up about the numbers, certainly, and I understand that to an extent, but at the end of the day, each jury trial I work on, each case I work on, I'm trying to take something, learn something from it, and take it on to the next case. So I could say I've done 100 or 120 jury trials, but if I go through the motions each time and I don't learn and I don't take something on from one case to the next, I don't really see the value in that.
So, last follow-up question on this subject. So, cases come before the prosecuting attorney's office. As prosecuting attorney, how do you determine when you're going to be the lead counsel versus one of your staff members?
And who's the question to? To me or?
Let's start with Locke.
Well, I haven't been in that position before, obviously, but down in Jasper County, we did it where it was broken up by divisions, meaning that one attorney handled all the cases that went to this judge, and another attorney handled all the cases that went to that judge. Now, other offices use what you call vertical prosecution, meaning that all crimes of a certain type are assigned to these attorneys. All crimes of another type are assigned to these attorneys, and they stay with that case all the way through. I haven't really made a determination, should I get into office, on how I would choose to go, which way to go. I've heard very good things about vertical prosecution, something I would certainly look into.
All right, thank you. Mark.
Well, in Cole County, our commission will budget enough money pretty much to keep a lawyer maybe 3 years, maybe into 4 or 5 years. And that's it. And we compete with the state where our lawyers can move to for usually at least $5,000 more a year and sometimes less of a caseload. So in Cole County anyway, at this point in time, the elected prosecutor needs to have the experience to try the murder trials, because it's going to be very hard to go out and find somebody with the experience to do those trials right when those families hang in the balance, so to speak, for the only justice they're going to get in the criminal system is going to come by that prosecutor working hard. And it's not just numbers. The trials represent people, and oftentimes victims. And oftentimes my trials now represent victims who have been innocent but murdered, or innocent but violated very terribly. And our county has enough for a prosecutor to have the experience to try those cases as he must.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go to closing statements. So we'll start with Locke. You have a minute for your closing statement.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you all having me out here this evening. This has been great, and again, I'm very excited by this. This has been an incredible experience so far, and I really look forward to the opportunity to serve as Cole County's next prosecutor. I'm proud to say I've been endorsed by our former Sheriff Greg White in this race, and thank you all very much. I look forward and would appreciate your vote on August 7th.
Thank you. Mark.
Thank you, and thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for caring enough to come out. In the world of politics today, it's disappointing sometimes the number of people that don't vote. So thank you very much for coming out. Let me say briefly, I've mentioned my 34 years experience, and I want to do the job. I want to do the job for the victims that we have that I need to do. I want to mention that this last term we added 2 victim advocates by a grant that I obtained. They are now working and helping victims. And I'm very proud that we've got that help. Secondly, this time, once again, I have been endorsed, as I have every time I've run for prosecutor, by our local Police Officers Association, the Jefferson City Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 19. They're the people that are out working to protect us, and their endorsement, I think, means very much, and I'm very humbled and proud to have that endorsement, as well as our Corrections Officers Association endorsement, and those are a large number of officers that work in our prisons, and they need all the help they can get, and I'm very glad to have their endorsement as well. So I hope that in your review, you'll decide that I'm the best person to continue as prosecuting attorney. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you coming out for tonight. I would encourage voters to get to the polls on August 7th and cast their vote for one of you. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you for hosting.
So we're going to take another brief moment, and then we will have our final forum with the candidates for Associate Circuit Court Judge.
Gary was saying before you got here that the microphones are on at all times.
Okay.
So you're aware. Yeah.
Very well. She poured us a little water.
We were in a neighborhood last night.
Yes, I know.
4 or 5 people said, "Hey, Cotton was just here." I said, "I know, I can't catch you. I can't catch you."
Everywhere you are, it's fun.
Oh.
I enjoy, and everybody's so positive
Yeah.
about you,
Yeah, and you as
how
well.
you're doing, and how you're running. So that's awesome.
It
How
is.
did those debates go? I got here
Yeah.
20 or 30 minutes ago, but
I think that's a good first one to go and challenge. But one was interesting. I thought they. Hey, Gary, you're getting better at this. Well, you had practice a lot. Nice to see you. Thanks, Leonard. I think. I'm gonna take that as a good. Yeah, anyway.
Having fun yet?
You know, it's pretty bad when you got two nurses,
I introduced myself.
nurse practitioner and the doctor calls you time today.
Do better by now, I should.
Sounds like a bad joke.
My diabetes is sick
Gary.
My diabetes is 608 this morning.
And you're here?
I gotta go in Thursday.
So, a couple things just to mention that came up earlier today. If you're going in material, you can't have any of those. Okay. Also, the microphones are not
Yeah, they're
incredibly
all-
sensitive, so pull them up close and close to the
Right. Right.
So we'll get started in a second.
Okay, folks, if you want to have a seat, we'll get started with our final portion of the forums tonight. As I said previously, this is the Cole County Associate Circuit Court Judge race. It features 2 candidates. To my left is Tim Anderson. He has 29 years of experience as an Assistant Attorney General for the state, prosecuting various crimes such as murder, assault, sexual assault of children, and various drug-related cases. To my right is Cotton Walker. He's been serving as the elected municipal judge in Jefferson City since 2011. He was municipal judge in Russellville from 1994 to 2007. Both men are running for the seat of current Associate Circuit Judge Tom Sodergen, who announced in January he would be retiring. So we'll start first with Tim, who will give his opening statement. He has a minute to share who he is and what he'd like to say.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you for being here, and I'd like to thank the paper for putting this on. My wife Debbie and I have been here in Jefferson City for a little bit over 30 years, and we've lived, worked, and raised our family here, and it's been a pleasure to do so. As we've walked the streets of Jefferson City, we've noticed a couple of things. One, there are hills. Two, the people here are kind, and the kindness is exemplified on a hot day by cups of cold water. I've been, as Gary indicated, was with the Attorney General's office for almost 30 years, tried a lot of cases, was in all courts, state and federal, appellate and trial, and I believe my experience will be helpful in becoming the next Associate Circuit Judge. Thank you.
All right. Cotton.
Thank you, good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm Judge Cotton Walker, and I have operated a successful business that is my law practice here in Cole County for the last 24 years, practicing law and litigating cases throughout the state of Missouri, representing businesses and individuals in courts such as the Associate Division and Municipal Court. I've also served as a municipal court for the last 24 years, being first elected in Jefferson City in 2011. And I think the experience on the bench is irreplaceable even in the practice of law, though I've practiced in most divisions and circuits throughout the state, the Court of Appeals, federal courts, and the Missouri Supreme Court. The job on the bench is something that I'm better now than I was when I started, and I intend to carry that experience to me, that I have with me, to the Associate Circuit bench at the county circuit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We're going to get started. We'll start with Tim. Tim, the Cole County Associate Judge, frankly has an overwhelming caseload. What do you believe are the underlying reasons for this heavy caseload, and what would you do to fix it or manage it?
It is definitely overwhelming. Before I filed for office, I went and spoke with Judge Sodergren, and he has been handling that docket for the most part by himself. They've had some judges come in to help, but there are over 4,000 misdemeanors per year. He's got a caseload, I believe he said, of 6,300 cases, and by comparison, I think the next highest would be in the 3,700 ballpark. So the reason for that is Cole County is the only circuit that only has one Associate Circuit Court, and there is a need for another one. My understanding is the legislature has appropriated and the governor has signed a bill for another judge position, whatever that might be. But there is an overwhelming need at this point.
So what would you do to fix that caseload or manage it?
It would be manage it, because the judge himself cannot fix that caseload. He would just have to deal with, as Judge Sodergren has, all the cases that come before him. So it's a managing thing and working hard every day.
All right. Cotton.
Well, Tim's right. The legislature has authorized, anyway, the addition of another associate division in Cole County. That's something that's passed the legislature before, but hasn't been budgeted to cover that position. And so one way to fix that caseload would be, in fact, to add another division. In the municipal court, we handle an average of about 11,000 cases a year. Admittedly, those are not the same exact cases at the associate division. We handle traffic and what are called infractions, which would be misdemeanor type level cases, very similar to the associate division. So I'm experienced in managing a busy docket, and we do it in this court one day a week. It's every Wednesday. You're welcome to come tomorrow. It's an open court. And basically every other Friday, a docket that we've developed to manage some of those people who are returning because of license issues. Our Friday docket is specific for the people who have to come back to court multiple times because they're trying to get their license renewed, because we want them to be licensed drivers. And I guess my point of that is that that's a way to manage the docket, is to to specify certain types of cases on certain docket days, and I have experience doing that in this court, and would be carrying that to the associate bench too.
All right. Second question, we'll start with Cotton. The state will add a second associate circuit court to the Cole County in 2021. How do you think the current docket could be handled differently with a second associate judge on board?
Well, one of the things that many of our surrounding counties handle with the associate judges is the associate division can then handle more family law. We have more family law cases than other types of cases other than criminal, which you heard plenty about in the prosecutor discussion a moment ago. But and the associate division right now just doesn't handle family law, kind of as a practice anyway. Judge Sodergren used to handle some family law, but that'd be one thing right off the bat. Many divisions in surrounding counties even have family court commissioner, or they use their associate division judges to handle that family law caseload, which would free up the circuit judges to handle more felony trials, more jury trials on more complex litigation. I believe that you have to, when you're up there, you have to work with the presiding judge and the other judges to talk about that caseload also, to know what each judge's experience they have, how that would jive with each type of case. I've practiced family law, I've done collection work, I've done small claims and debtor-creditor law, which is the type of cases that are handled in the associate divisions now. So you would want a judge who has that background to handle those type of cases.
All right. Tim, same question.
Yes, again, in talking to Judge Sodergren, he has had to farm the adult abuse cases out of what he would normally do. He, again, does roughly 4,000 misdemeanor cases. He does, in terms of criminal work, he does all the appearances, all the arraignments, all the preliminary hearings. He'll do civil work. Well, he have trials up to $25,000. He'll do mental commitments. He'll do weddings, which he said is the fun part of the job. But with the state adding a second, there would certainly be a division between the caseload. Again, with 6,300, it would lower it to roughly 3,200 cases, which is high for the rest of the state still. So there'd be plenty to do.
All right. Tim, next question will begin with you. How would you assess the performance and results of alternative courts, such as the DWI, drug, and veterans courts?
From what I have seen thus far, they've been very good. I had the opportunity when I was with the Attorney General's office and prosecuting a number of cases, especially up in northern Missouri. The Attorney General had named me the methamphetamine strike force head, and we had a number of cases up north. So the prosecutor there, they had started a drug court, and he asked that I be the one who attend and represent the prosecutor up there, since I had so many of the cases. So every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock, I had to be 100 miles north, but I learned quite a bit. From taking part in drug court, being a member of the drug court, I learned that there are some things short of trial that, frankly, as being in law enforcement, being a prosecutor, I wasn't sure about before, but I saw the effects it had on people, and it was very positive. So I think some of the alternative courts, like were discussed with the prosecutor's office, they can be very helpful to us in taking the matters that were, say, nonviolent, and you've got a first offender. Those kind of things can really go a long way.
All right, thank you. Cotton, same question.
Well, I think the alternative courts are valuable for most people and most communities. It doesn't work for everyone or for every community. The value is that you introduce people to services to break the cycle of the root of the crime. And in Cole County, our drug court has been successful for most. and the Veterans Court and the other courts that, the treatment courts that I've seen are valuable for the communities. They also reduce the population in the jails statistically. In municipal court in Jefferson City, I've created a community partnership program which kind of models the treatment court model, where we make sure people are connected by just connecting to volunteers in a community partnership program to make sure that persons who come to court who have mental health issues, substance abuse or treatment issues, they're homeless, they need education connection, jobs, and veterans, the volunteers come here and I introduce them so that they are connected to those services when they come to the municipal court. The municipal court and that associate division is where most Missourians have a connection to a court if they ever have to go to a court, and so that's why I believe that's important.
All right. Next question, we'll start with Cotton. What new ideas, if any, would you bring to the table for other types of alternative courts that could help address a special need in the court system?
Well, I intend to carry that model that I've developed here to the associate circuit level, working in the system that already exists, and that is I know we already have a drug court, a DWI court, a veterans court. Cole County doesn't have a mental health court set up as of now, so that would be one. The partnership I created in Cole County is something that exists. The position that I partnered with exists throughout the state, and so I just connected with the community mental health liaison, and our local one just staffs our court. He sits over here where Jeff is sitting most weeks, and if someone presents with a mental health issue, whether that's self-reporting, because sometimes being a judge is being like a barber or a bartender or a preacher. They tell you more than you even need to know. Or whether I get that information from the prosecutor or a report at a sentencing level. And so I intend to carry that and either develop a mental health court or at least make sure that we carry that same, if you will, volunteer program to connect those persons to services.
All right. Tim, same question.
It's interesting. I had a conversation just last week with a young lady from Russellville, and my wife and I sat down to have dinner. She saw our brochure, and she took a glance at it, and then she sat down next to us, and she said, you were the director of the methamphetamine strike force. I said, yes. She said, tell me about that. And so I did, and then I asked her why she was interested, and she was a girl about 18, 19 years old. She said, I have worked for the last little bit, interned at the Pranger Center, and I've been also up in Columbia. And she said, my goal is to become an addiction counselor. And I said, tell me about that. And she said, I have seen children as young as 10 years old who have been on drugs. She said the majority of drugs that we've encountered have been methamphetamine and have been marijuana. But she said when you've got kids who are 10 years old, then 13 and on up, that is a huge problem in our community. I've heard quite a bit of discussion about a mental health court of some sort. The question really is, what is mental health and what is a condition caused by the drugs that we've been talking about all of tonight. So I would be interested to see on a mental health court, but the courts we've got going right now are pretty good.
All right, thank you. Tim, well, I'll say to both of you, you both distinguished this throughout your discussions, but I'm going to ask you a little bit deeper. How have your unique experiences prepared you for this position you're seeking?
I think with 29 years with the Attorney General's office, always being the road team, always on the road, in court, in all the different courts, that you learn about judging. You learn about judges. I've seen good judges, excellent judges. I've seen judges that have a little bit to be desired. I think the biggest thing, though, is the importance when you do criminal cases or you do federal cases, when you're in front of a jury and you have an opposing attorney, that makes a huge difference in the complexity of the case. In circuit court or in federal district court, you'll have a very capable attorney typically, and you'll have to deal with objections. You'll have to make objections. You'll have to figure out how to submit evidence or object to evidence. You'll have to relate. And really, being a lawyer, like being a judge, I believe, is all about relating. We're called to relate. Relate to people, but at the same time have an information or a knowledge of the law and be able to address that law, interact with people, and be fair and impartial. So I think, again, just to summarize, just the years in court, the years in front of a jury, the years interacting with an opposing attorney, whether it be an appellate court or a trial court.
All right, thank you. Cotton, same question.
Well, I do think being a litigator is important to serving as a judge, and serving in that, practicing law in that capacity, practicing before different judges, it certainly lends itself to serving as a judge. And Tim's right, you see good judges and bad judges, just like good doctors or bad doctors. And through my years of experience, both on the municipal court and in my practice, I've been chosen by the Missouri Municipal and Associate Circuit Judge Association to lead and train other judges. The Supreme Court has appointed me to committees to train other judges and to work for justice, which is therefore recognizing that my experience on the bench has paid off and that it should be emulated. Uniquely, Tim and I both have the practice in the courts, and yet I've served on the bench, and it is different to sit in a chair, literally this chair in this room, and serve and listen to each case, and while still sentencing those when convicted to fair sentences, also showing compassion to those both victims of crime, but even defendants who might be here as victims of circumstances.
All right. Next question, we'll start with Cotton. It's funny, with a sheriff's race, prosecutor's race, you're looking for somebody who's tough on crime or whatever. Judges, I'm assuming you try to strike the middle line, but do you believe sentencings have been too lenient or too severe?
Where? In Cole County?
In Cole County.
Well, actually, at one of I'll repeat something we heard at one of our other debates. Tim and I have been together all summer, of course. So, and statistically, Cole County falls in the middle. I mean, Central Missouri is not as Central Missouri courts have not been as harsh as some more rural courts. They've been more harsh than some of the courts in the city statistically. The one area, of course, judges have to be independent of law enforcement. That's a different branch of government, and of the executive. But at the same time, each case we have to decide based on the facts and apply the law. The one area I think that is important, and where I think that we have to be have to know how to handle, is those cases committed with weapons. And that's not something, when I sit in municipal court, I get assaults, but nothing with weapons. I don't get felonies on the bench in this court. But if an offense is committed with a weapon and you plead guilty, or there's a plea agreement, or you're found guilty before me, you're going to jail. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And so if that's something that's tougher than what's been done, I know that each case you have to weigh all the circumstances, but that's something that definitely we need to be tough on.
All right. Tim?
Cotton's right. Cole County has been right in the middle, and it is really a reflection of who we are. My favorite Bible verse is what I put on my pamphlet: do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. And it's in response to what does the Lord require of you. And I think all of us, but then especially a person in the role of judge, do justice. And that's first, that's foremost, do justice. Whatever justice is in a particular case. And it depends on your point of view. Just as an example, I had a case where a little 5-year-old girl was sexually abused by her father. We went to trial. He was convicted. The little girl testified on the stand. The sentencing assessment report put together by probation and parole, an average of the whole state, recommended 10 years. I said, Judge, this case deserves more than that. And so we had quite a discussion about that. He was kind of angry that I asked for more than what probation and parole had recommended. He ended up giving him 26 years. So it depends on the case. You'll know it when you see it. If a case involves children, the abuse of children, that's a case that, and you'll see our judges paying great attention to that kind of case. To answer your question specifically, it all depends on what you have, and we've had some fine judges here in Cole County. I think they've done a good job. Lenient where needed, and kind, in other words, merciful, and stiff when needed as well.
All right, to characterize a different method, you both sort of touched on this. Sex crimes and weapons are two areas that each of you have perhaps leaned a little bit more firm on sentencing on those. What other areas do you feel strongly that where you would lean more on that firm side?
Well, we've talked about the treatment court examples, and whether it's a treatment court or it's someone who's been offered a probation on a first offense or sometimes a second offense, if you've been offered that opportunity to connect to services, to get treatment, to have a conviction not on your record if you complete a successful suspended imposition of sentence, or not do jail time on a suspended execution of sentence, and then you look that gift horse in the mouth, or you commit an offense again, then you're going to be punished. And I think you see that in my role here on the bench, that while there are circumstances, and poverty being one of them, some of the probationers have trouble paying for their probation services. That would be one example where you have to be a little more lenient. But if you violate probation or come back a second time, you're going to get a harsher sentence.
All right. Tim?
Yeah. Those of us who have been blessed with children understand that one of the biggest jobs we have is to teach our kids the consequences of their actions. And the same is true in the criminal arena. For me, because I spent many years as in the methamphetamine strike force, for me, the distribution and the trafficking of controlled substances is huge. They're the ones that bring the poisons into our communities that result in a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old being addicted. That's a huge thing in our community. Those are people we need to get after, and sternly. Again, child abuse. And a form of child abuse is these parents who are allowing their kids to be addicted, smoking marijuana with them, or doing methamphetamine. Those are cases I think deserve strictness.
All right, thank you. Tim, what role, if any, does a judge have in improving recidivism rates in prison?
That's a great question. A judge has a role. The interaction between the judge and the defendant can make a difference for that person. Again, from the time I took part in the drug court, I was impressed with the particular judge that was heading the drug court, how he interacted with the defendant. He was very stern. He'd do a carrot and he'd do a stick. But a judge can have an impact. They need to show, again, first justice, and then after justice can be mercy, can be compassion, can be a form of kindness. At the same time, you're setting an example for the community. What you do with this individual is going to be a reflection on what might happen to the next one. So you do want to send a message if you're a judge. You do want to tell people, we will not tolerate here this distribution or this trafficking of drugs. We won't tolerate it in our community. So you can interact with defendants. You have very few opportunities to address them directly except in open court, but it can happen.
All right, thank you. Cotton?
Well, obviously, I believe a judge has a role in decreasing repeat offenders, and respect for the court, and yet respect for each individual involved in the process. That certainly extends to the defendant. It also obviously extends to victims of the offense they may have committed, if it's a intentional or a victim crime, and respect for the other parties involved, and yet being consistent, and, if you will, as a parent, as Tim said, be firm but fair, and be consistent. If you do that, and the experience I've had here is, then the defendants, even if they do commit that offense that second time, they come before you, they know what's coming. I mean, and so that, I hope, means that when they're outside of my courtroom, they're thinking about not wanting to come back and not committing an offense again. So sure, they have a role.
All right, thank you. Cotton, restorative justice is a system that focuses on the rehabilitation of offenders through reconciliation with victims and the community at large. Do you believe this is an effective criminal justice practice? And give examples of where you believe it's worked or has not lived up to expectations.
Well, the examples that I've studied, it's a mixed bag, and I think it really depends on the people. I'd also, people involved, that'd be the victims and the defendant. To use it as a broad brush and paint it over any violent crime, or as Tim was talking about, sex crimes, the crimes committed with weapons, especially if it's not a first offense, I would say it'd be hard to say it's a perfect system. The concept of allowing everyone to be involved in the outcome and the betterment for the community, to not have that person commit again, is fantastic. And if you will, a utopia if we could really live that way. So the cases I've studied, I'd say it works in many situations, but it is case by case dependent.
All right, thank you. Tim?
Chuck Colson was one of those involved in Watergate. He was one of those involved in making the break-in happen. Chuck Colson was sent to federal prison and then became a Christian while he was in prison after reading the book Mere Christianity that had been sent to him by a friend. When he got out, he started a ministry to prisoners called Prison Fellowship, and an arm of Prison Fellowship is called Justice Fellowship. And Prison Fellowship, I was part of the Prison Fellowship group here in town. When I first came to town in 1985, they'd have a Bible study every Tuesday night. And every Tuesday night I dread going behind the walls to the prison and meeting with prisoners. And every Tuesday night when I left, I appreciated the fact that I had been there. In Justice Fellowship, Colson's group has recommended restorative justice, and the goal there is to allow, if the victim chooses, the opportunity to ask the defendant questions under controlled environments. For example, and so many victims have this question: why me? Why did you break into my house and steal my TV? Why did you steal my car? And get to ask the defendant that directly. And then the next arm of that was, if both parties agreed and the victim had to agree, give them the ability to say, all right, instead of this guy going to prison, how about this guy coming and mowing my lawn, or this guy buying me a new TV and installing it? So there are aspects of that we haven't even begun to touch. But in our system, with all the drug crimes we have so many drug abusers who may not have done something violent, whom it might be better if they're allowed to do something to interact with the victim and make amends.
All right, thank you. Last question. Tim, do you have any concerns about the current physical courtroom, which you would be seated if you're elected, security, etc., that you believe should be addressed?
I've been in the courtroom a couple of times. If the leg room is anything like this bench, then I have concerns. Other than that, there's nothing that I've observed. Judge Sodergren and his staff have done a great job.
All right. Cotton?
Well, I concur. I think the security at the county courthouse, including that particular courtroom, the training that they have from their chief bailiff, and including his predecessor, who also helped in this court, is effective. When I was first elected here, the Jeff City Municipal Court didn't have a metal detector, didn't have the same level of protection for the attendees. It's not just for the judge, but it's for everyone in the courtroom, and we instituted that for both for the court and for the city council meetings. Of course, I happened to take the bench not long after a terrible courthouse shooting, which was not at a court proceeding, but at a city council meeting in St. Louis. So, but the county courthouse, since they put in the metal detector downstairs and have a plan with their trained bailiffs, I think it's effective.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll go to our closing statements. Tim, you'll have a minute to wrap things up.
All right. Again, thank you for being here. It is my pleasure to run for this office. My wife and I we have met so many people across our journeys, across this, not just this city, but Cole County. Missouri's judicial code says that the requirement of a judge is that they be independent, fair, and impartial, and that is indispensable to our system of justice. Now, I'm a lifelong conservative, and I find it almost ironic that the one position that we ask to be fair and impartial, you have to run for office politically. I'm a Republican, but at the same time, I can be fair and impartial. I can set aside my experiences and would appreciate the opportunity to judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Cotton?
Thank you. Just a little over a quarter of a century ago, my wife and I decided that Jefferson City would be our home in Cole County, and we'd raise our family here near where we had other family. And we've been engaged in the community, serving on boards, serving not-profits, knowing the community, which I think is important for a judge to know what the expectations of the community are for you as a judge, and so they know you, so they know what to expect when you come before the judge as a participant, as again a victim or as a criminal defendant. And to serve as the associate circuit judge will be a natural progression to my commitment to that public service in Cole County. And thank you, News Tribune and Gary, for allowing us this opportunity.
All right. On behalf of the News Tribune, I'd like to thank both of you for coming, answering our questions, as well as those who attended the forum here tonight at City Hall, and for the assistance of the city and JCTV staff for helping make this event possible online. Lastly, again, I would be remiss to not mention, we encourage you to go out and vote April 7th, August 7th, sorry, wow. You missed April 7th, by the way. Yeah, it's been a long election season, hasn't it, gentlemen? August 7th, go out and vote. There are a lot of good candidates on the ballot, and they need a vote. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.